we get asked by parents, like, my kid's just not confident. How do I develop the self-confidence in my kids? It's a really big thing. And how do you actually develop self-confidence in yourself? Like, we talk about self-doubts, we talk about imposter syndrome, we talk about these things that keep us debilitated. But what are the things that give us that drive to believe in our abilities and then start to take action? Because this is key to whatever that we're going to achieve in life, whether we're trying to build a business, whether we're trying to help our kids chase their dreams. We have to have that level of self-confidence. High performance isn't just about elite sport or crushing it in business. It's about showing up as your best self every single day. It's your entrepreneur putting late nights and early mornings, making sacrifices to turn a vision into reality, while still showing up for school runs and bedtime stories. It's the young athlete battling self-doubts, hormonal shifts, and the pressure to prove to themselves that they have what it takes to win. It's a parent who is constantly on the go, juggling work, family, and the demands of daily life while trying to stay active and set an example for the kids. Welcome to the High Performance Gym podcast, where we explore the science and strategy behind building strength inside and out so you can perform at your best in sport, business, and in life. Whether you're chasing a big dream or supporting the next generation to chase theirs, or proving that age has no limitations, one thing's for certain: you're only one rep away. So let's get to work. My name is Kay Witherspoon. I'm the founder of Lit Performance Academy. We deliver health and performance programs to youth female athletes and entrepreneurial women of all ages. For over 15 years, we've worked with more than 700 clients, athletes, business owners, and entrepreneurs to help them train both their bodies and minds. Our female-oriented approach combines evidence-based sports and nutritional science with hormonal health that enables our clients to harness the menstrual cycles and perimenopause without burning out. Right now, we have two core offers. The first one is the menstrual cycle workshops. We run online and in-person workshops to help young female athletes understand their hormones. Our mission is to teach them how to use their cycle as a health metric, performance tool, and a superpower, so they can thrive in both sports and academic pursuits. The second one is the Warrior Woman Program, a program for entrepreneurial women over 35 juggling business, family, and fitness, but feeling held back by low energy, mental fatigue, and a lack of confidence in their bodies and leadership. Designed to build resilience, restore confidence, and feel 10 years younger without burnout. You can find more information in the show notes. I want to see a world where young athletes, entrepreneurs, and dream chasers take their health as seriously as their ambitions, optimizing their body and brain to break through limitations and reach peak performance. So for 45 minutes, I've been sitting here even procrastinating, not so much procrastinating, but figuring out how am I going to start this podcast episode? How am I going to introduce this podcast episode? I've done about 3 or 4 retakes, and it's just a case of, I'm just going to do it and just see how it goes, because it's actually going to give context to the podcast episode of the day. So it's about how to overcome imposter syndrome and self-doubts. Now, this is something I've really struggled with my whole life, but I know it's a big thing that a lot of other people do struggle with as well. Because I do talk with a lot of people on a daily basis, and we train youth athletes, and this is one of the main things that we get asked by parents, like, my kid's just not confident. How do I develop the self-confidence in my kids? It's a really big thing. And how do you actually develop self-confidence in yourself? Like, we talk about self-doubts, we talk about imposter syndrome, we talk about these things that keep us debilitated. But actually, what are the things that actually give us that drive to believe in our abilities and then start to take action? Because this is absolutely key to whatever that we're going to achieve in life, whether we're trying to build a business, whether we're trying to help our kids chase their dreams. We have to have that level of self-confidence. So we're going to talk about 3 key things here. The first one, we're going to talk about imposter syndrome and self-doubts, because that's the big problem. We're going to talk about ice baths and cold water exposure. Trust me, there's a theme to this. I promise you there's an actual theme to this. And then we're going to talk about the main strategy to get over self-doubts and imposter syndrome. Now, if you're watching this on video, you will see that the air quotations on imposter syndrome. If you're listening to this, you wouldn't have seen that, but that's kind of what I've just done. So we talk about imposter syndrome like it's some form of clinical disorder, but it's actually not. It's more of a psychological pattern. So what do I mean by that? We're talking about a clinical disorder, something that has been diagnosed as a clinical condition. But imposter syndrome is just a kind of a pattern. And I think when we start to understand what imposter syndrome actually is, then we can start reframing it and we can start taking action on overcoming it. Because although I'm not a big fan of giving things labels, especially when it comes to like sort of psychological patterns or conditions or whatever that is, it does allow us to then understand it. And when we understand it, we can then start taking action to find a solution. Well, I think that's actually key, in my personal opinion. So what is imposter syndrome? Well, actually, imposter syndrome was actually discovered back in 1978 by two psychologists, Pauline Clance and Susan Emes. And they didn't actually define it as imposter syndrome because, as I think Susan Emes said, it wasn't the condition, it wasn't a syndrome. It was actually just a psychological pattern. And they're coined it as imposter phenomenon. And to be honest, I prefer this. I prefer to say imposter phenomenon or imposter fear as opposed to a syndrome. But syndrome's like what's being made mainstream. It's what people can kind of relate to. But anyway, it was first coined by these two psychologists. And what they found was, they'd done some studies of high-performing women. So these women who were actually achieving, that's a key thing here, they were already achieving in life, but they didn't see their achievements. They see their achievements as luck and not ability. So they didn't see themselves as having the ability to achieve it. They just found that it was actually akin with luck. And what they found was that these high achiever women were actually, they were fearful of being found out and being exposed as a fraud. Yeah. And that's the difference there between self-doubts and imposter fear or imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon, whatever label you want to kind of give that. Because self-doubts, I feel, is something completely different. Okay, self-doubts is when you start doubting your abilities. You doubt yourself as a person to be able to achieve something, and this actually keeps you stuck. And this is what we find a lot with the kids, young kids that don't believe in themselves, don't believe that they can achieve things. I'm going to give you a little story now, okay, when I first got into the fitness industry. So when I first got into the fitness industry, there was a big thing at the time. So social media was very relatively new, so it was in its infancy. And what was big at the time was a website called Teen Nation. And Teen Nation was where all the big dogs went onto, and they're done like the blogs. They wrote blogs. That's what it was. It was like a blog post site. I think it's kind of evolved since then. I think we do videos and stuff now, but at the time it was just a written word. And I used to look at this and think, oh, I used to be able to kind of do that, but was always debilitated by the self-doubt in myself and saying, I can never do. You were looking at these people who were writing, and some of them had like letters after their names. Some of them had been in the industry for a long, long time. And you'd be kind of like, oh, I was sort of saying like, oh, I could never ever achieve that because who am I to be able to write for this website and, that type of thing. And this can kind of keep you stuck. Now, you could say that was imposter syndrome or imposter fear or imposter phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, but it actually wasn't because I wasn't actually doing the thing. And that's the whole point. I wasn't actually at that point where I was maybe writing for that publication and I'm thinking, how did I actually get here? Like, this was complete luck. This wasn't down to my abilities. This was complete luck. One day I'm going to get found out and then they're going to kick me off the site. Like, I didn't even get to that level because I didn't take action. And that's when it becomes to self-doubt. I was doubting myself. Like, I didn't think I was achieving. I didn't think I had it in me to be able to write a good enough blog post to put onto that website. Therefore, there was no action. And that's the difference. So imposter syndrome is when you're already taking action and you're already in the thick of it. You're already getting the rewards or the achievements, but you don't think you're worthy of the achievements That's the difference. Self-doubt is when you're completely debilitated. Therefore, you're debilitated by self-doubt. But what we're going to touch on in a minute is actually self-doubts can be actually empowering when we reframe self-doubts. So let's touch on, I want to bring into this podcast now a guy called Adam Grant. And by the way, if anybody knows Adam Grant, I would love to have him on the podcast. Really would. Here's the thing, like if you want to achieve something or you want to kind of build something, you've got to ask. If you don't ask people, if you don't ask for something, you never get it. So here's my ask. If anybody wants Adam Grant, please ask him to politely, nicely, persuasively to come on the podcast, because I think he's an amazing dude. And I would love to really dive deep into his brain around imposter syndrome, self-doubts and confidence, because he has a really nice way of reframing confidence. And if you read his book, Think Again, he puts it in a really good way. So what he says is confidence is you have, think of it as I'm trying to think from your perspective how you can see this. So imagine we had, at the very bottom, we've got what he says it's imposter syndrome. I'm going to call it debilitating self-doubts. Then at the top, we have overconfidence, arrogance. These are the people who kind of, they think they know everything, but they really don't. But they're so fixed in the ways that they're not willing to change. And then you have at the bottom, say the debilitating self-doubts, where you're kind of like, you're just so uncertain, you have no confidence in your abilities. But then you have like the middle layer, let's call it layers. So it's like a sandwich. So at the bottom, debilitating self-doubts. At the top, arrogance, overconfidence. And then in the middle, that's what Adam Grant refers to as confident humility. Now, what this is basically you being secure in yourself, but also uncertain to the fact that you don't know everything. All right. But you have that, you can adopt that student-based mindset where it's like, do you know what? Like, I'm confident in myself, but I know that I don't have the tools yet. I know that I need to go and learn these things, or I need to go and reach out to these people, and I need to go and, do more, have more experience in this subject. That is that humility side of it. But you're confident that you can learn that. You're confident in yourself that, if I went into this situation, I'm not going to know everything, but I'm confident that I could learn it. All right. That's what that confidence, humility is. And I love the way that he kind of reframes that, because that's a really good place to be. Because a lot of people see confidence as, oh, I have to know everything and I've got to be at the top. And no, they won't put the work out there, or they won't try the thing. They won't start that business. They won't go and enter that event, or play for that sport, or play for that team, because it's like, well, I'm just not good enough yet, or I'm not there yet. And that is what keeps us debilitated. But when we're at that point of like, I could probably push myself into it, and I'm confident that I can adapt to it, that is that confidence, humility. And I love the way that he kind of reframes that. So how do we get past the point of self-doubt and up to that level of confident humility? Well, we've got to be able to see, the first step is to be able to see self-doubt in a different light. And I love the way that Rick Rubin actually puts it. He's got a really great book called The Creative Act. So anybody who's really into creativity, like myself, it's a really good book to read. Anyway, but the way he kind of reframes it is like, if we doubt ourselves, then that becomes a psychological condition, because we actually tell ourselves that we're not good enough. But if you don't doubt yourself and instead doubt the work, so if you're putting work out there, you can put this in any way. So you could be playing like a football game. Let's say you're playing football, and it could be like, you're not doubting yourself, you're just doubting that maybe the effort that you put in that particular game wasn't good enough. Or let's say you're putting yourself out there for your business. You're not doubting yourself, you're just putting out the work that you're putting out there isn't great yet. But what that does is it means that you can then revisit that work, or revisit that game, or revisit that performance. Let's put it on the frame of performance, and then say, how can we get better? Because now what we can do is we can then make that work better. And when we make that work better, that then turns into an amazing thing. So we're not doubting ourselves, we're doubting the work that we're putting out there, or the effort that we're putting out there, and we could always improve. And I love how he kind of does that. So the second thing I want to bring you to is cold water exposure. So ice baths, cold showers, these types of things, because they're quite popular now. especially in the self-help world. But I do think that they're kind of done, well, maybe they're promoted in a wrong way. Now, there's a lot of health benefits to cold water exposure, which I'm going to kind of touch on now. But you see a lot of gurus who are, jumping in ice baths and these types of things, and saying, if you want to be kind of disciplined, this is what you kind of want to do. But I'm going to tell you why that's not actually true, and what you can do better. But the first thing is, like, ice baths, there's a lot of research about how it promotes or stimulates dopamine. So, dopamine is the motivation and pursuit hormone. And it's seen to kind of raise like dopamine levels from baseline up to, I think it's the 60 minutes. Like, cold water exposure was something like 10x, which is like the same as cocaine, which is ridiculous. But, you'd have to get in cold water for a long time to get those effects. But the point is, it does stimulate dopamine. So if you're getting a cold shower in the morning and you're feeling like motivated and energized from it, then that works, right? Because that's giving you that energy. From observations as well, it seems like a lot of older people like gravitate to cold water as they get older. I don't know whether this is like an instinct thing, or maybe it's just something they jump into cold water and they're like, wow, like I feel like 10 years younger doing this. Like, I feel amazing for it. And they continue to do it. You see a lot of older people like jumping in cold water, which I think is amazing. Because as we kind of get older, we lose these abilities to develop or stimulate dopamine, which kind of leads on to things like Parkinson's disease. So maybe these kind of older people know something that we didn't, or certainly they figured something out before we did, or before researchers did. Anywho, I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole there. But the main thing is, when we're talking about cold water exposure, like, one of the things that it does do, and this is the point that I want to really touch on now, and to help you to understand it, there's a part of your brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. And I have spoken about this before on other podcasts episodes. So what this part of your brain is responsible for things like willpower, tenacity, grit, like your ability to be able to do hard things. All right. This has been shown in research to be large in athletes and the athletic population. So when they've looked at elite athletes, the anterior midcingulate cortex is very large and well developed, whereas in the obese population, it's very small. It's big in athletes, it's small in the obese population. But we can develop this part of our brain. And the way we develop this part of our brain is by doing things that are physically hard. Okay, so again, think of athletes. Athletes are continuously pushing themselves through physical, hard challenges. They're going into competitions, they're pushing the body to the limits, and doing these physically difficult challenges that develops that part of the brain. I'd actually love them to do some research. I don't know whether they have, on like entrepreneurs who have gone through all of that struggle, where they start at the bottom of the bottom of the pile, and they push themselves to the top and they kind of build successful businesses. I'd love to see what the anterior midcingulate cortex is like, because I see athletes and entrepreneurs as very, very similar in terms of like they're trying to achieve these things with, no security, there's no guarantees, totally uncertain, and you have to go through these hard, difficult challenges in life. I'd love to see what that research is. Maybe it is, and if anybody knows, please let me know. But anyway, so yeah, you have this part of your brain which can be developed, and this develops that kind of mental strength, that resilience, that toughness. And I think this is why a lot of health gurus or a lot of mindset gurus are actually pushing this thing on. But I want to kind of reframe this in a minute, just for a second, okay? I'm going to use Tony Robbins as an example. Okay, so I like Tony Robbins as an example because Tony Robbins does actually have a really great backstory. And Tony Robbins has been shown, or he has been in the past promoting like cold water. And he, I think, jumps into cold water every single morning, and he's been doing that for X number of years, right? So when people say these things, oh, Tony Robbins is doing this, and he's jumping in cold water, that's why he's successful. It's like, no, that's not why he's successful. It's like people look at David Goggins and they think, oh, David Goggins runs 100 miles a day. That's why he's got where he is. And it's like, that's not what got David Goggins where he is. That's not got what Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins didn't start jumping in cold water and then became successful. Yeah. Tony Robbins, how he became successful was because Tony Robbins was learning NLP, so neuro linguistic programming, and he was actually told when he was going through this process that he couldn't go and practice on people. It was against all the rules. He couldn't do that. Where he was like, well, I'm just going to go and do it anyway. He was already breaking the rules. And what he was doing is when he was finishing his programming, when he was finishing his course, he would then go to random people on the street, like standing in a queue to a line to a restaurant and that type of thing. And he would go and practice on these people. Like, how much tenacity and grit does that take to then just go when your kind of superiors or these people who are coaching you and saying you can't do this thing, and he's going to go and do it anyway. He's walking up to strangers and he's practicing this thing. So when people look at Tony Robbins, he didn't get successful because he jumped in cold water. He got successful because he was already doing the hard thing. Like, Tony Robbins then started using cold water therapy, I'd imagine. I don't know Tony Robbins on a personal level. But imagine he started using these cold water therapy things because he'd already got past the point of putting himself in these uncomfortable positions and these uncomfortable situations, which was developing that mental strength part of his brain. And he needed more stimulation to be able to do that. So what's the next logical thing? Well, physically putting yourself through hard, difficult things, like jumping in cold water. So where am I kind of going with this? Well, let's just give you an example of, let's say you're in a business, and I'll give you two examples. We're going to go for a weight loss example, and we're going to go through a business example. Okay, let's start with the business example first. So let's say that you are struggling to put yourself out there. You're struggling to record videos and put these things online so then you can get more customers and more traction and more eyeballs onto your personal brand or onto your business. Like, you're not doing that thing. And then some guru says, well, go and jump in a cold shower and develop your mental strength. Okay? What we've got to think about, when we're faced with something hard, we're faced with a decision. And decision fatigue is real. We're making decisions every single day. So what clothes to wear, what food to eat, which way to turn, left or right. All of these things create decision fatigue. Now, when you're challenged with a big task that is emotionally draining, so if you think, well, I've got to go and put myself on video today, that is draining. That decision to be able to do that is very difficult, and that can drain a lot of energy. So you want to limit those decisions. But then if you're going to jump in a cold shower and you're standing under the shower and you're going, should I do this? Should I not do this? And you're not quite sure whether you should or shouldn't, then you're getting that decision fatigue. Then if you're then going to do a harder thing later on, you might not have the mental energy to be able to do that. So what I'm kind of saying here is, it's like, if it's a choice in this case of, look, what's actually holding you back? Well, it's the fact that you're not putting yourself on the video, or you're not putting a post out on social media, or you're not reaching out to people, or you're not doing the sales call. Then that's the hard thing. Not jumping into a cold shower. Like, do the hard thing. Do the thing you're avoiding. That was the thing that would develop your mental strength. So let's give you another example now on, say, weight loss. So let's say you want to lose weight, but you're too afraid to go to the gym, right? That is your big thing. That is your big challenge. If you can just challenge yourself to go to the gym, that is your big hard thing. You don't need to go to a cold shower. You don't need to jump in a cold shower to develop that mental resilience and strength. What you need to do is just do the thing that you're avoiding. Yeah? It could be just as simple as getting up early in the morning. Like, instead of lying in bed till 7 o'clock, if you got up at 6 o'clock and worked on something that was important to you, that could be your big hard thing. Yeah, like for me, every morning, getting out of bed isn't easy. But I get out of bed at 5:30 in the morning because it's important to me that I start doing some work because of the way my life's structured. I get more work done in the morning, so I like to be up in the morning to do work. But getting out of bed is actually a really difficult thing for me to do. I find it really hard. But every morning I still get out. I still push through that uncomfortable situation. And that is all that is. So when we're talking about cold showers, it's a case of it puts you in an uncomfortable position, or a physically uncomfortable situation, which develops your mental resilience, mental strength, or grit, whatever you want to kind of call that. So yes, it can be a really great tool to develop that mental strength, but is it in place of something that you're actually avoiding? So here's a better way to think about it, or a better way to strategize that. if every day from Monday to Friday, you're either going to go to the gym or you're going to put a social media post out, these things that you're avoiding, like, let's not have a cold shower on that day. Let's just do the thing that actually holding you back. So let's go to the gym that day, or let's put a social media post out there, or let's reach out to a person that we need to reach out to, or let's take that sales call, or whatever that it is, that difficult thing. Let's do that Monday to Friday. And then on Saturday and Sunday, when maybe it's a bit more of a relaxing day, then maybe you use that cold shower then, because then you still want to do a difficult thing on another day, but it's on a day where you're already overwhelmed with things that you've got to do. So then on your Saturday or Sunday, you think, the only thing I need to do today that's difficult is to jump in a cold shower. So therefore, then you can use that as a strategy on the weekend. So I hope I've made some sense with that. I hope that's kind of maybe give people a different way to look at like cold water therapy. Because while I think it's good, while I think it has a place in people's lives, I think you've got to have a purpose of using it, and you've got to get context to it. So when you're seeing people do things online, and oh, this person's doing that, so I need to do that. It's like, bring context to it. Did they start off doing that? Or is that something they do now because they started like down the bottom and then worked their way up? And that's what they're using now because that's the strategy that they need at this time. So I'm going to bring you now to the third action. So this is mentorship. Mentorship is essentially what is going to push you into taking action and to get you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. You know, you could be mentors for your kids, but then you also need your own mentor as well. So what we've got to kind of think about is, if you don't believe in yourself, then you've got to find somebody who does believe in you. You can borrow their self-belief. Right? So if you find someone who believes in you, like think about your kids. You might be thinking about your kids and your kids are like doubting themselves. You're like, well, I know you can achieve that. Like, you've got to tell them that. And they have to borrow your self-belief. Like, you've got to tell them that it's okay. You don't have to believe in yourself, but I believe in you. When you know that somebody believes in what you're doing, that gives you strength. And when that gives you strength, that develops into this self-confidence. Okay, that is, so we need to be able to borrow somebody else's self-belief so we can use that for our own belief. Now, I use a mentor. I have a mentor. And this was somebody that I reached out to at Christmas time. Actually wasn't. It was November time. So I had this thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to, I've worked with women for years, and it's always been an area that I've been into. But I wanted to get into deeper with it. I wanted to dive into the hormonal side of things, the menstrual cycle, perimenopause, which is something that really kind of fascinated me. And we have a lot of young girls in the gym, a lot of young athletes in the gym. I wanted to be able to provide a program for them that would actually help them to understand the hormones, so they could use it as a health metric and a performance tool and a superpower. So they weren't seeing it as a limitation, but something that would actually benefit, well, it would actually set them up for life, so they could thrive in sport and life. Now, although I had knowledge in it and I believed that I could deliver this content, I still had those fears, those imposter fears, that I was coming into a topic that was, that doctors talk about, or maybe women talk about, and I'm a guy. So I had a lot of these sort of not self-doubts, but there was a lot of these negative types of feelings or connections to the thing that I wanted to deliver. I listened to a talk by Dr. Nikki K. It was at the Mac Nutrition Live conference, and I listened to her talking, and I was just like, I need to work with this lady. Like, I have to go and speak to this lady now. I want to be able to work with her. And I've never ever done this before in my life, but when she came off the stage, I've been at loads of conferences, and I'm not the type of person who would go up and get like a photo or talk to people. I don't do that. That's just not who I am. But when she came off the stage, I made sure I was the first one to go and speak to her. I literally ran up, didn't literally grab a hold of her because that would have been a bit weird. But I did jump in and had a conversation with her, and I got a photo taken with her, and it was all kind of all happening in a bit of a blur. And anyway, when we got back, I was like, I need to work with this lady. I need to reach out to Dr. Nikki, and I need to, for whatever reason, I need to work with her. Anyway, so cut long story short, I reached out to her and we set up some calls, and that has been absolutely game changing for what I'm actually doing now in my business. So now my business, I'm actually going to be delivering this talk on the menstrual cycle to sports clubs, universities. This is something that I would never have done in the past because I was by myself. And if you're in business, if you do have, like, if you're listening to this now and you are an entrepreneur, or you're doing some kind of pursuit or something on your own, you do sit in your own mind a lot. And when you're by yourself, it's very isolating, and you can almost, you do have a lot of doubts. This is why you need that support. You need someone to have who can believe in what you're doing, and they can help you push you in the right direction, but also give you that confidence to say, yeah, that's good enough. Like, just put it out there and see what happens. And that's what I'm saying about the mentorship. Like, mentorship is so important and it's so powerful. And everybody needs a mentor in life. Kids especially need mentors, but as us as adults, we think we get to the point where we're like, oh, we don't need this. We do. We absolutely need mentors in our life. Everybody needs a good mentor in life. So if you listen to this right now, or you're watching it on YouTube and you want a really big takeaway, find a mentor. Like, find a mentor in life. We all need mentors. We all need people who can believe in us. So yeah, that's your action step. Go and find a mentor. Incidentally, Dr. Nick is actually going to be coming onto this podcast, which I'm really chuffed about. And we're going to talk about female hormones. We're going to talk about, the life, women's life and hormones. It's absolutely fascinating. And we are going to have a good discussion about that. So if you do have any questions about female hormones and you would like to get those answers, then feel free to reach out and let me know. Okay, so let's wrap that up there for today. Thank you again for being here today. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me an email. You can find that in the show notes. If you want to challenge yourself and take a quiz, I have 2 quizzes. So one's for female athletes. Sit down with your daughter and take this. You'll get some amazing insights. And if you're an entrepreneurial woman over 35, there's a quiz there for you as well. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And just remember, always believe in yourself and never give up on your dreams.